Okay, so if I say a name like maybe Muhammad or Ibrahim, you get the picture of that person, right? Muhammad or Ibrahim, you maybe imagine a Muslim boy wearing that cap or something. You get the idea. If I say John, you can imagine a person, an English person, wearing a full suit and all. You get the idea. If I say Nimal or another Sinhala name, you get the person's picture and all. So, Kagwa is basically a name like that. Actually, Kagwa is an African name. So, this poem is based on an African folk tale. So, Kagwa is an African name, African common name. There are like hundreds of Ibrahims in Sri Lanka. There are like thousands of Jones in America. Just like that, Kagwa is just a common name. So, last week I said the word choice matters when it comes to poems, especially. So, the term Kagwa, the name Kagwa here represents that African culture, African nature. He basically builds the city of in Africa. So, this is a hunter. Then he says, hunted the lion. So, can a normal person go and hunt a lion? Usually, when I go to the Dehiwala zoo as well, uh, by going near the lion cage, you can feel that tension. You be anxious. What if this big animal managed to somehow break this cage and escape? What will happen? So a normal person cannot hunt a lion, but this Kagwa managed to hunt a lion. How? Through bush and forest bent his spear. So he is this African man hunting lions with a spear. With a spear, sorry. So you know, a spear is actually this one. I hope you could see the screen. This is the spear. It has this metal head, a wooden metal head connected to wooden stick. You basically throw it like this. That's what a spear is basically. So it's really hard to hunt a lion with this spear. Why? Because you throw this thing. If it missed, then you have no weapon. Then the lion will come and eat you. Otherwise, you have to be, if you are going to hold this in your hands, then you have to be in combat, like we could call that point blank. That's in shooting, I think. Yeah, in close range with the lion. So you have to fight it face to face with a spear. So this is a really brave person. So Kagwa is a really brave person, a brave hunter. Not just brave, he is a skilled hunter. Why? Because he hunts lions. So one day he found the skull of a man. One day he found the skull of a man. Then see, here the poet uses something like this. One day he found the skull of a man and said to it, "How did you come here?" So if I write this in a sentence, can I use period, or we could say a full stop here? No, right? Because the sentence doesn't end here. To complete that sentence, we have to use this part as well, the next verse line, and said to it. We have to use this. So the sentence doesn't end here. Actually, it falls to the other line. So this is another literary technique, and we call this enjambment. I have given this under literary devices as well. ENJAMB MENT. Enjambment. That means here I have given that under, I think I gave literary devices. Yeah, see, a sentence continues on to the next line without a pause, forcing the reader to keep going. This is the word enjambment. So that is there. That's another literary technique. Enjambment is there. So one day he found this skull of a man. Skull of a man means there's a dead body and it was rotting and all. Now only the skull is left there. So he found the skull of a man and said to it, "How did you come here?" Okay. So imagine like this. The word choice is important. really important when it comes to poems. So let's say something like when you see something unusual, let's say you have a big teddy bear, and of course you usually keep this, let's say, on your table. You have this big teddy bear, you usually keep this on your table. But one day after school, you came home and you see the said teddy bear is sitting on maybe sitting on a chair in the living room, and you wonder, okay, how did this happen? Who brought this here? And maybe you just go it near it and uh, maybe pick it up and say, how did you come here? So that, because that's unusual, because of course usually the teddy bear is in your bedroom. How did you come here? You go and ask it because it's very unusual. But you expect an answer from the teddy bear? No, right? You don't expect an answer from the teddy bear to open its mouth and talk to you. Okay, Ratna came and played with me, and now she put me here, and oh, you don't expect it to answer. So basically, that's like a mock question. You don't expect an answer. So Kagwa does the same thing here. In the forest, it's not very common to see the skull of a man, a person, a human. Skull for human being, that's something rare. So he just said to it, how did you come here? Because just because it's unusual. It doesn't expect an answer. But then what happens? The skull opened its mouth and said, talking brought me here. Okay. So what happened there? Kagwa did not expect an answer at all. He just, okay, how did you come here? You shouldn't be here. No? You were just talking, and that's all. Did not expect anything. But the skull somehow opened its mouth and managed to answer to his question. Now he is flabbergasted. Actually, in this part, talking brought me here. So you may have already noticed this is another literary technique. Usually, the skulls cannot talk. So if the skull is talking, that means you are basically doing an action that is usually done by humans. So that's personification. As I said, wind is what? Wind is whispering, personification. The flowers are nodding their heads, that's personification. So the skull is talking, that's personification. But don't mix up with this last piece, anthropomorphism. That's something else. That's basically making something actually you. So why am I saying this? This is personification. You may ask, you may now ask this, sir, if the skull is talking, that's an action done by human. Why doesn't it fall under the category of anthropomorphism? There's a reason. Just because it can talk, that's a human action. Just because it talk, we cannot say that's a real human. But imagine this movie. There was this movie called the Cars or whatever, and there is this one car called Lightning McQueen. So that car could talk. Thereafter, it had these feelings and it had friends. So it not only did talk, it had friends, it had feelings. So all those things combined, that's actually acting like a real human being. But the skull, it doesn't do all that, it just talks. Therefore, it's personification. Don't mix up those things. I hope that is clear. Okay. Thereafter, the skull opened its mouth and said, Tokim brought me here. Another technique is there. Actually, that's irony. So, what is irony? I think I have given that under the trade devices as well. Irony means we expect something to happen, but the opposite, or something unexpected happens. That's irony. And actually, irony has three categories: verbal, situational, and dramatic irony. Uh, Dramatic irony only happens in dramas. Verbal and situational irony, that's present in poems and short stories and all. In here, basically, when the skull opens its mouth and said, talking about me here, that's verbal irony. Because why? When you talk to a skull, we don't expect it to speak. When you talk to teddy bear, you don't expect it to speak. That's what you expect. But here, the skull actually replies. So something unexpected happens. That's the irony. So it is called verbal irony when the outcome is the opposite of what is expected. So verbal irony is there. So you can put a mark and write that down. That's the very first stanza. It has 6 verse lines as well. Okay. The second stanza. Khagwa hurried home. Khagwa hurried home. So when I say hurried home, you could say like something like this. I said, if I say she started running so fast or whatever. If I say someone is running fast, someone is walking fast, if I mention the person's name, some sort of a picture appears in your mind, right? If I say Rahna is walking so fast, Rahna walked so fast from your house to supermarket or whatever. So the picture appears in your mind. She is walking super fast. Just like that. When you say Kagwa hurried home, in my mind personally, a picture of an African hunter holding a spear and all, going really fast, that kind of a picture appears in your mind. In my mind, at least. So that's another form of imagery, actually. Basically, imagery means like basically creating a visual picture in your mind. And according to the sensors, there are 5 types. Visual imagery means what you see, something a visual something of visual appears in your mind. Auditory imagery means a sound. If I say boom, that sound you can hear. It appears in your mind. Thereafter, we have what tactile imagery means touch. If I say something is really soft, you could like feel it. That's tactile imagery. And we have taste, gustative imagery. If I say something is sweet, you know what sweet is. You know how sweet things taste. That's gustatory. And something related to smell is called olfactory. Those things are not important. For your level, we only have visual and auditory imagery. But this is something new. Kagwa hurried home, that is called kinesthetic imagery. So the spellings are Kinesthetic, kinesthetic imagery. That means basically those visuals of him doing some action appears in your mind. The simplest meaning. So that is there. But have you ever thought Kagwa hurried home? Thereafter, what does he do? Went to the king's chair and spoke. So king's chair, it doesn't mean the kind of king's chair means the throne. Our chair is something a wooden chair or sofa or whatever. King's chair is the throne. So it's king's chair actually symbolizes the royal court. Chair means he didn't go to the chair and spoke. So king's chair, that's a symbol that is used to symbolize royal court. Royal court. COURT court. In Sinhala we call it Raja Sabha. So he went to his king and spoke. In the forest I found this talking skull and all blah blah blah. But before that, have you thought, okay, he found this talking skull in the jungle, and he went to the king and said this thing exists, but he did not bring the skull with him, right? Why? He could have just take it and maybe tie it to his belt or something and go to the king and all, but he did not do such a thing. Why? This thing. The main moral, the main message that the poet is trying to give us is to avoid unnecessary talk. And another moral, I have actually given it here. Another message that the poet is trying to give us is what? Learn to listen carefully. Think before you leave. Those things are there. Think before you leave means in Sinhala you say parinna pera sitha. So to provide, to give these messages, to give these morals, that's why he says Kagwa forgot to bring the skull with him. He simply went and met his king and complained about this skull. That's all he did. If he had some kind of an evidence, then the situation would be upside down. It did not happen. Why? Because as soon as heard he heard the skull speaking, he just rushed to his king. And why? Because can a skull speak? No, right? So that's something special. So he may have thought, okay, something special has happened. Maybe I go and report this to the king. He will reward me quite handy. He will give me some gold, jewelries, or something for saying this thing. That's why he rushed to what? Rushed home and went to king's chair, to royal court. And there he says, in the forest I found a talking skull, and the king was silent. Okay. Here, if I say something like, let's say, uh, your teddy bear is actually talking. Only you know that. And you are trying to convince me. Yesterday, last night, teddy bear started talking to me and said there will be a tsunami happening in late December this year. So leave your house. So no one is going to believe you. Why? Because that's out of ordinary. That's not something that happens every day. Just like that, this king is a very practical king. Uh, he did not believe what is this person saying without any evidence. So the king was silent. Silently started thinking about it. Then he said slowly, "What? Uh, never since I was born, my mother, have I seen or heard of a skull which spoke." So king was silent for a moment. So he thought about it. He slowly uh, thought what is going on, and actually that shows a difference. So here, see, Kagwa, as I said, the point, the main message that poetry is trying to convey in this poem is what? Avoid unnecessary talking. Think before you leave. All those things, right? Kagwa hurried home. See, the word choice. Kagwa hurried home, but the king was silent. Then he said slowly. So, as I said, you should learn to listen to others. But Kagwa, as soon as he heard it, he just rushed to a king's throat. But the king's reaction was completely opposite. So there is a contrast, right? How Kagwa acted and how the king reacted. So the poet is actually using this thing to show how you should react in any situation, just like the king. Be silent, think about it, and slowly uh, take a good decision. Be practical. See, never since I was born of my mother have I ever seen or heard of a skull which spoke. Since I was born, I have never heard of such a thing. So he doesn't believe. So as I said, the usage, the terms slowly and hurried, those things are there to give that moral, to give an idea about the about what the poem is about. Okay, so the king doesn't believe. He is not convinced of Kagwa's story. So king doesn't believe in Kagwa. Now, imagine what kind of a person is this? This is a great hunter. He is someone who could hunt lions even, not just a small Italian or not some small animals like that, but lions. So he's a great hunter. He's a very skilled person. Maybe he's a a really strong individual, whatever. But now he is like a child uh, in front of a royal court saying this unbelievable story. So what does that show? That's what I say. Think critical. A powerful person, the usage of lion in this context. He's a powerful person, but now nobody trusts him. Why? Because of his unnecessary, unwanted talking. That's what happened. So no matter what you are, no matter who you are, no matter how powerful who you are, actually, uh, your unnecessary talking could lead to your demise. So see, those are the morals that poet trying to convey through this poem, and the way he does is it actually pretty impressive. So the king called out his guards two of you now go with him and find this talking class. See, enjambment is there. The sentence doesn't end here, it falls to the next line as well. So enjambment is there. So what happens? The king called out his guard. So of course the king has this security, his guards. He calls them, two of you now go with him. Now I order two of you now go with him and find this talking skull. Okay, the guards are sent there to verify his story. But if his tale is a lie, tail mean the story. Tail tail, that's the dog's tail, the wagging thing and all. This tail is the story. If his tail is a lie, so at this point, as I said, in a poem, the word choice is really important. See, the king doesn't say what is if what he says is a lie. He straight up says if his tail is a lie. So at this point, the king is referring to what Kagwa said as a story, a made-up story. That's why he uses the word tale. So his story is a lie. So king is not convinced at all. And the skull speaks no word. The Kagwa, this Kagwa himself must die. The stakes are made final. Okay. So a sentence was given. If his story turned out to be a lie, he should die. But look, the term himself must die. That's also important. As I said, in a poem like this, the word choice is really, really important. The Kagwa himself must die. Why couldn't the king just say the Kagwa must die, you must kill Kagwa or something like that? Why the poet specifically used this term himself? Why? To show something special. As I said, the poet is trying to convey some morals, give out some ideas about unnecessary, unwanted talking. This Kagwa himself must die. That means he is the one. Himself means not anyone else, not the guards, not his family, no one else, just him. So he should pay for his crimes. He should pay for what he did. Basically, the poet is trying to tell you what? Due to your unnecessary talking, that will lead to your own demise, not anyone else's. Whatever you speak, that will lead to your demise. So be careful of what you speak. That's why he uses the term himself. See, it's a simple poem. I could simply do this within like 15 minutes or so. But literature is not that. Literature is, as I said, not what is said, it means what is not said. So that is there. These words are actually important. Then they rode into the forest. So rode into the forest, that means he doesn't specifically say they went there with their horses. Road means you ride bikes, you ride bicycles, and also in this era in Africa and all, they don't have those things back then. So road means they used horses. They rode into the forest. For days and nights, they found nothing. Okay. So for days and nights, if I say, okay, now Kagwa, the king ordered the guards to kill him if somehow story turned out to be a lie. Now for days and nights. So imagine if he says something like, now Kagwa is going to die. Now he is like a crazy man, a lunatic. He is going through the forest. He is looking everywhere. Now, as days passed, he is being more and more scared. Maybe the guards are already trying to kill him. And he is saying something like, begging them, okay, please don't kill me. Give me one more day. Give me only 12 hours. We will find this skull and all. So he is already scared. So by saying something like that for days and nights, it builds suspense. So now we are actually curious about what will happen to it. So that's actually the poet's skill, to build suspense in reader's mind. And at last, what happened? What happened? They saw the skull. So finally they found the skull. And Kagwa said to it, see here, enjambment is here as well. Kagwa said to it, is actually one single sentence, but it falls into two lines. So enjambment is there. As they found the skull, Kagwa said to it, how did you come here? So Kaga once again talks to it and asks the same question that he asked before. How did you come here? The skull said nothing. Then Kagwa implored. Implored means begging. Please talk, please answer my question. Something like that. But still, the skull said nothing. Okay. So now you can imagine what happened. And actually, there is something, another meaning in this. See, how did you come here? But the skull doesn't answer. If you really think about it, Kagwa is basically begging. He's forcing the skull. He's begging the skull to speak, but the skull doesn't answer. But before, previously, when Kagwa just said something random, okay, how did you come here? Then it started to speak. So this is not related to your curriculum at all, but imagine this something like this. This actually related to this thing called truth cannot be forced. Truth cannot be forced. That's another theme in here. But I don't write this in your examination because for your level this is too advanced. Imagine like this. Uh, there are some court cases whereas the suspect, we say Sakakara, he is lying about not committing the crime and all. But after within the case, he goes home and tells to his friend, "Okay, I win this case, but I actually murdered this person." Now he got away with the murder, got away from this murder, but actually he committed that crime. He only tells the truth to his friend. But at court, the judge is actually forcing him, "Tell me the truth, tell me the truth." The police is forcing him to tell the truth, but he doesn't. So you cannot force something out of a person. You cannot force the truth. Truth is something the that comes out gradually. You cannot force it. So that theme is there as well. So basically, Kagwa is asking, begging from the skull, forcing the skull to speak, but it doesn't. That's why, to show that, that's the reason why the skull is not speaking. So if you have ever thought about it, yeah, that's a possibility. You may get questions like that if you are thinking really critical. And that's what should happen actually in learning. Not just listen to every single word I say. You need to have your own opinion, own questions about the poem. Okay. So finally, the guard said, "Kneel down." So now guards are going to carry out King's order. Guard said, "Kneel down." They are ordering him to kneel down. Means in Sinhala we say Danagahan. Basically, bend your legs from the knee and stay on the ground. Kneel down. Then they killed him with sword and spear. So that's also ironical. Why? Sword and spear. We know this Kagwa hunted lions with this spear, but actually, at the very end, his death was caused by another spear. So that's also ironical. Why is it ironical? He's a hunter. He used to kill animals with a spear from his own weapon. Well, not his very own spear, but this is another spear, but same kind of weapon caused his death. That is also ironic. And then, only then, after he was killed, the skull opened his mouth. After he died, after every single thing happened, then the skull opened his mouth and says, "Huntsman, how did you come here?" Now that is actually being like being sarcastic, but not sarcastic here. But yeah, "Huntsman, how did you come here?" The skull repeats Kagwa's own question back to him. So previously, Kagwa asked this from the skull. "How did you come here?" At the very beginning. Then Kagwa basically asked the same question and begged the skull to answer. "How did you come here?" And after he died, then the skull asked the same question from him. "Huntsman, how did you come here?" And the dead man answered, "Tokim brought me here." So first of all, can a dead man speak? No. Then there is personification. And Tokim brought me here. That's repetition. Uh, Repetition of the uh, first stanza, last verse line. Tokim brought me here. So simply, repetition is another literary technique. We repeat something for what? We repeat something to be clear, to be exact, to be more precise, like to emphasize something. If I repeatedly say, ask you to do this homework at the, let's say, during this lecture, I would say something like, do this homework 5 times. So that means I'm trying to emphasize it. I'm trying to give it some importance and make you do it. So in here, the term, the verse line, the talking brought me here, that part repeats. And how did you come here? That part repeats. So those things are repeated to what? To highlight the main idea, main moral of this poem. Unnecessary talking would lead to your demise. It's main idea. That's why it's repeated. Also, do you think the huntsman got his answer? How did you come here? He was expecting an answer from the skull, but the skull did not answer. The skull waited till the guards killed him and asked the same question. And Huntsman says, Token brought me here. So, previously, for this actual owner of this skull, this has happened to him. Something like this. Because of his talking, someone has killed him or something. And finally, Huntsman learns his lesson. Token brought me here because of his unnecessary talking. Now he's dead. Host is dead. Something like that. Also, there's another thing. So that's the whole poem. There's another thing in this. A theme I almost forgot to mention, which is evidence. Law is blind. See, the whole reason I use this picture. This is actually the goddess of law, Nitya Devangan. So she is holding this scale, a sword, and if you really look closely, her eyes are like she is blindfolded with this piece of cloth. Basically, that means the law is blind. Why would we say law is blind? Because law is basically based on evidence, right? Just like this skull. You cannot go to the king's chair without any evidence and say the skull is talking. At least you should have brought the skull with you. Otherwise, you would be a liar. You would be considered as a lunatic. So, law is based on evidence. Even in real world, law is based on real evidence. Sometimes even the judge knows this person did not commit a crime, but the other party, the accusing party, somehow managed to, let's say, provide some real good evidence that the accused cannot escape. Therefore, then the judge has to punish him. Why? Because law is blind. So it's basically based on evidence. Just like the king wanted some kind of evidence, some kind of proof to authenticate what Kagwa is saying is true. So that theme is there as well. Law is blind. Okay. Is everything clear? Can we go through the about the author section? Yeah, glossary is there, of course. Nothing really hard in here. Bush is yeah. Bush means a sort of untamed forest. Yeah, Pandura Singhali. Yeah, is the poem clear? Can we go through the themes, thereafter morals about the author, literary techniques and all? Anything that you need to me to explain once again? Is it clear? Or do you have any doubts? You have a doubt? Oh no. You need to really do something with that mic. Okay. I cannot hear anything you say clear. Okay. So we will proceed with this. Maybe use a hand free like this, like me. Okay, that's fine. We can fix that later. Okay. So about the author, the reason I usually talks about this author and all after the poem is the reason. Otherwise, you will be taking unwanted points about the author and mentioning those things in introduction, and that's not what my intention is. You only need to remember one or two things of the author. That's all you need. So Since we are going to answer an essay question today, you will see. Okay. So, Edward Lowbury, his actual name was Edward Joseph Lister Lowbury. So you don't have to remember these things. You don't have to recall these his era, 1913 to 1007. You don't have to recall those. Edward Lowbury is enough. This is for uh, just for your information. FYI. So he's a British poet, a doctor, and a pathologist. Don't think about it really seriously. Uh, just he's a poet and a doctor. That's all. Served in Kenya, nothing special. With Royal Army Medical Corps. So he served in uh, British Army Medical Corps. So he was appointed to serve in Kenya, and in there he learned African folk traditions, which inspired the Huntsman. So in there, he learned about African culture, thereafter their folk tales and all. So yeah, that's that. Learned African folk traditions inspired the Huntsman. This Huntsman is based on a folk tale as well. Became fellow of the Royal Society of Literature, important, published other poetry collections. Charmak is the toothache, poetry, medicine, not important. You only have to recall one or two things. His name, maybe served in Kenya, or maybe another one of his other poetry collection, one or two. That's it. You don't have to remember all these things. Not needed. Just for you to start your introduction. That's it. And there we have line by line analysis. So, uh, what did I miss? What did I forgot to tell you? Mm-hmm. Structure of the poem did I miss? No, right? Yeah. Uh, this is a narrative poem. That's the only thing I think I forgot to tell you. There are some types of poems as well. So there are ballads. Ballads are like a conversation, telling a story between two parties. For your syllabus, I don't think there is any ballads, but yeah. And we have narrative poems. Thereafter, elegies and all. This is a narrative poem. Basically, a third person is saying a story, not in first person, third person. Basically, saying a story through a poem. So this is a narrative poem. Narrative. Narrative poem. That's the only thing I think I forgot to mention while explaining the poem. So that's about the author, and that's the poem. And the main themes. So themes, as I said last week, themes are the things, uh, the main things, main topics that are discussed in a poem or short story or whatever. You can easily identify them because they repeat in that literary text. So the danger of careless or excessive talking, that is there. The danger. How could you say such a thing? Because the skull itself at one point says, talking brought it there. The skull says that. Talking brought me here. So, the skull story. So, same thing happened to the skull because of its excessive talking. Thereafter, what? Kagwa falls in trouble because of his excessive talking. So, he met this talking skull, but if he would have just went home and be done with his day, nothing would have happened. The skull will be there and Kagwa will be at home. But he went to king's court and complained about this. He reported this, and king did not believe him and gave this sentence: if he is lying, the guard should kill him. So if he fell into trouble because of his excessive talking, and at the end, of course, he was killed. That is also because of his excessive talk. So the theme is repeated in multiple scenarios. And pride and overconfidence, that is there. Pride and overconfidence, because Kagwa is a person who wants lions. He goes to the king with no evidence and hopes the king will believe him and reward him generously. So that is there. Pride and overconfidence, that's not a major theme, but that is there. Justice based on evidence, of course, another major theme. I have explained this before, so I'm not going to explain every single thing. Justice is actually based on evidence. Law is blind. That's there. Truth cannot be forced. Another minor theme, as I have explained, truth cannot be forced. That is there as well. I hope you could remember. So these things are not very important. These are minor themes. The major theme is this: the danger of careless or excessive talk. That is the. So morals are in differ from themes. So morals mean the lessons that we can take to improve our lives. What you could learn, the lessons. Think before you speak. Words can have serious consequences. Don't boast. Boasting means like Sinhala we say purasa. I don't know the another synonym for boasting. I can't recall one. So basically, like over explaining, like saying some false false things about you or someone else to show your status. Let's say we have 40 acres uh, worth of coconut plantation or whatever. So basically, you are boasting, but you don't actually have such a thing. So don't boast about the things you don't fully understand. So Kagwa, he went and reported the king about this talking skull, but he did not fully understand this concept. So don't boast about such things. Then learn to listen carefully. So if Kagwa were to listen to what Skull was saying, he was only seeing this thing as a talking skull. But if he were to listen to what the skull was saying, talking brought me here, then he would have understood the message that the skull is trying to give. Don't talk unnecessary things. He would have understood. But he did not listen. That's why he fell into trouble. So you should learn to listen carefully when others speak. Then think before you leap. That's there. That's actually an idiom. Truth only comes out freely, never under pressure. That's another minor moral. Main things are before you leap, learn to listen carefully, think before you speak. Those things are the major ones. And that's thereafter we have past question. So from I have studied all the older examination questions for 2015 unto 2024, I think. I couldn't find the 2025 paper. Soon I'll be able to. But yeah, from all those things, this poem has only appeared once. 2016, part 2, question number 6. You can check with your past paper question book as well. This is the question. Excessive worthless talking may ruin people. This idea is portrayed through humor in Edward Lowbury, The Huntsman. Discuss. So this is what we are going to answer today. Excessive worthless talking means unnecessary talking, basically same thing. But this idea is portrayed through humor. Humor means basically there are three parallel words when we talk about something funny. One thing is funny. Thereafter we have humor. Also we have sarcasm. So humor means generally anything that is fun. Generally anything, whatever. Funny means something that makes you laugh, something that makes you happy. Funny is a subject. So something that I find funny, you will not find fun. So, but humor means anything that is related to happiness and sarcasm. Sarcasm is like basically something else. How would I explain? Sarcasm is like imagine something like this. If we if your teacher gives you a lot of homework and you say, "Oh, how great!" So that is basically being sarcastic. It's not great. You are annoyed, but you are just saying, "How great! Wow, amazing!" You are not happy at all. This means sarcastic. So now we are going to talk about humor. So this poem falls under the category of humor, as you already know in your syllabus. The poems are categorized into 5 categories, I think: social, humor, nature, uh, freedom. I can't recall every single thing. And also, this poem falls under the category of humor. So we have to discuss how this idea is portrayed through humor. So we have to discuss funny things. So we could use those ironical things, uh, irony, the thing, those things as well. Okay. Enough talking. We will simply go through this equation. Let me copy this quickly. Uh, and I hope you are ready with pen and paper. So I can simply start answering questions. Okay. Let me open Word file real quick. Give me 1 second. I have to close this thing first. New document. Oh, I cannot do this. Why? Give me 1 second. Yeah. Okay. I ran into small problem. Yep. 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 All right. Let me share the screen. I was looking for the that introduction template that I shared you last week. I managed to find it. Don't worry. This one. So you already have this template with you, so you don't have to repeat the same thing. So I'm just going to replace these important things with our poets related in things related to this context. Okay. So Edward Lover. So we could start this life. Edward Lovery. You can simply like this by your own self, so you don't have to repeat every single thing that I write in introduction. Edward Lowberry, L should be capital. Lowberry, I think I hope I is correct. Was a great poet from he was actually from modern era, I think. I can't recall it. Or you could say something like either modern era or from England, United Kingdom, or whatever. Thereafter, he wrote many poems. Otherwise, you could say something like poetry collections or whatever. In simple, we could say he wrote many poems. Here is punctuation mark, including, take one example. What? Poetry and medicine. But actually, poetry and medicine, this is a poetry collection. So a poem and a poetry collection is different. A poetry collection means basically like a book which contains multiple poems. So in that case, I will write something like he wrote many poetry collections. Otherwise, I will be wrong. That's why. Poetry and medicine. You could simply put a full stop here and start with a new line and talk about the poem as well. Or if that's too complicated for you and you can't recall uh, another work of him, simply use including what the hunts. See, the Huntsman. I wrote it in inverted commas. That's one thing. Also, T and H is capital because this is the title of the poem. So, title of a work, maybe a movie, book, or whatever, you have to always capitalize. So, the Huntsman is a poem. So, if you can't in your examination, you cannot recall uh, things like his other poems and all. Simply use this. Use the text you are writing as the example. He wrote many poems, including The Huntsman, which is considered one of his best works, his best creations. What if they are only, you can say, among his best creations, uh, this poem or The Huntsman, whatever, is considered a masterpiece because it. Okay, now our question is one. So, now, conclusion template we will Remove that from the screen. Okay. So now the introduction template is ready. Now introduction is ready. Now we have to write the thesis. So as I said, thesis, that means the main argument. So what do we have to prove here? Excessive worthless talking may ruin people. It is portrayed through humor. This is what we have to prove. So we have to add this to the very end of our introduction. It's considered masterpiece because we will simply, you could write this as it is or change the word order like this. Considered a masterpiece because it portrays the idea of excessive worthless talking and how it may ruin people. Or you could simply add the humor part. It portrays the idea through humor. Humor. Actually, HUMOUR humor is British English. HUMOR is, I think, American English. So since British English is considered correct in Sri Lanka education systems, use HUMOUR. Okay, that's the same reason sometimes you see in your school book color as like this, and maybe in social media color like this. Same reason. Why? Because COLOUR color is British English, COLOR color is American English. There is this person called Noah Webster or something. He's a grammarian. In American English, he removed this use and all. That's why it's a bit different. That's the same reason. Since my word is set to American English, same reason. That's why there is a red line under MOUR. If I remove it, it disappears. Okay, that's about it. So, what are the points that I can take now to show that this idea is what excessive talking may ruin people? So, what are the points that I can take? So, looking at the poem, we could say something like what? Humor. Humor should be there as well, not just excessive talking. How it shows to humor. I said something about irony, right? So we could take that as an example. So my point will be, so to be clear, I will be write according to the P, B, J, and T method. You can write this like a paragraph. This is just to show you how to write this. So my point will be something like what? Kakwa's death uh, mirrors the skull's death in an ironic, or you could say something like humorous way. Only use one word, okay? Don't use both the ironic and humorous. Only use one. Kagwa's death mirrors the skull's death in an ironic way. So how Kagwa dies is exactly how the skull, uh, the person who owned that skull has died. So same thing. That's humorous. That's fun. So background. Kagwa asks the skull. So that's another thing. When you are answering your essay questions, always use simple present tense. At sometimes when you have to use past tense and all, but stick to simple present whenever it's possible. It's easy and it's easy to follow. And be careful about using this S. If it's singular in simple present tense, you have to use S, not ask. Kagwa is singular, so you have to use S, ask. Kagwa asked the skull, how did you come here? So, as you can see, I used the quotation, the quote inside my body paragraph. Otherwise, you can use this quote outside as well. That's box quote. So, do as you wish. Fine. And it answers another quote. Token wrote me here, right? There's a period, or whatever. I can't remember. So this is the background. Thereafter, what happens? Later, the same question, irony, is asked uh, from Kagwa's own skull. The same thing. And he gives the same answer. So after he died, the skull asks the same question from Kagwa, and he gives the same answer. That's the background. Now we have to justify to prove my point to this background. So what my point is, Kagwa's death mirrors the skull's death in an ironic way. And this shows this is somehow connected to this idea. So now I need to prove this Kagwa's death is ironical. And I have given the background. So I would say something like the humor lies. Lies means not like telling lies. Lies means it exists uh, in the uh, exact same thing happening to Kagwa uh, that he once mocked, something like that, yeah? And he accepts it almost as if he understand uh, he deserved. Yeah, the humor mocked Kagwa that. So the humor lies in the exact same thing happening to Kagwa that he once mocked. Uh, that he wants. So he once mocked the skull. Mock means okay, how did you come here? He is asking this and that and all. So he was mocking the skull, but the same thing happened to Kagwa. So that is humorous. And he accepts it at the end. After that happened, he accepted what happens to him. And he seems to be like he understands he deserved it. He doesn't protest or going to argue with the skull. Okay, actually, since because the skull did not speak, uh, that's why he died. No? But he was not like arguing with the skull. He just say, okay, talking about me here. Just like he understood the message and he realized that he deserved it. It's his fault. Remember the term I said himself. He himself must die. He is the one who is in fault, who is in who should be responsible for his own crimes. So he deserves. He understands that. So that's why he is not going to argue with the skull. That's the okay. The thesis. Uh, Now we have to connect this point to this main argument. This ironic repetition actually. This is repeated in multiple places. No, ironic repetition proves that Kagwa's own excessive. See, own means he himself must die. He should be the one who is responsible for his birthless talking. Kagwa's own excessive. Other term was what? Excessive worthless. So excessive worthless talking is what we do. From here it proves that Kagwa's own excessive talking is what ruined it. Repetition. Why is not there? Repetition. Hmm? It is a wrong, it seems. Okay. R-E-P-E-T. R-E-P-E. Oh, oh. So this is okay. Another point. What else can we do? Point number 2. Something like mm, what else? What else? Okay, the king scene where the Kagwa expects the kings to believe what he is saying, but king does not. So, yeah, I will ignore that. That's fine. It happens. Okay, you are using a mobile screen, so it happens. That's fine. Okay, so Kagwa expected the king, to believe his story and reward him generously, but exact opposite thing has happened. So that is also humorous. He expected him to he expected his king to believe him, but that did not happen. So that's also humorous, and that is because of that the king sentenced him to death. So we could take that as another point. Kagwa's expectations, we could say, are completely shattered. Completely shattered. Shattered means it's a bit informal, right? Completely, we could say, reversed by the king's decision, or you could say king's response, whatever. Only write one thing, okay? Don't write both the words. Only write decision or response. Okay. So what happened? What happened in the story? Kagba ushers home. He was excited. Then, not just that, he was expecting a reward for his discovery, for what he has found in the forest. But instead of rewarding him, the king threatens to kill him if his story turns out to be a lie. Turns out to be a lie. Lie means it's a bit informal, like turns out to be a lie. You could say something turns out to be false. False. Yeah, use only one word. Yeah, this is what happened. So now I have to prove my point. His expectation are shattered or reversed by the king's decision. So Kagwa was uh, going to share good news and get rewarded, uh, but instead received a death threat. So it shows uh, how Kagwa uh, fell into uh, fell in trouble. That's also informal. Kagwa had to face such consequences uh, because of his own uh, unnecessary talking, or in here I would say own wrongdoing or whatever. You could say unnecessary talking, excessive talking, whatever. Yeah, only use one thing. And the thesis, now I have proven what uh, he went to share the good news, but instead he received a death threat. So that is humorous. Of course, you can add the humor part in here as well. I'm not going to write every single thing. But yeah, now we have to connect it to the main argument. What is our main argument? Excessive and what worthless talking may ruin people. So we could say something like this comic or ironic or whatever iconic incident or whatever proves that excessive and worthless talking uh, caused Kagwa uh, Kagwa's demise. Caused Kagwa's actually talking has caused Kagwa's own demise. Much better. So that's about it. And you can add the conclusion as well at another point. So I can write another one, but I'm not going. If I were to answer with another point, because I have only given you one question or write a small essay, so you can actually add another point to this. Because usually for an argument, you have to state at least 3 points. So I have wrote two here. Yeah, here. I will do it up a bit if you still writing. Okay. So we have to add another point. If I were to write a point, I would say something like what? Excessive talking may ruin people. He. Yeah. Mm, where the Kagwa has imploded to the skull. He begged the skull to speak. So he is this great hunter. He's a lion hunter. He's skilled enough to face deadly animals, but he is now begging in front of the skull to speak. So that is humorous, right? He's a brave man. He's a very brave hunter, and he is begging a skull to speak. An inanimate object, that is humorous. So you can take that as a point, like his desperation before the skull. Uh, it contrasts with his uh, persona. That's too complicated. You can write it in your own words. Idea is that he's a lion hunter, but still he is begging in front of the skull. So that's humorous. And you can justify it as well by saying something like what this contrast between being a fearless hunter, skilled enough to hunt lions, and now another term you could use for imploring is pleading. 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 Same as implore. Beg. Oh, no, don't use beg though. It's informal. Uh, don't use beg. You can use pleading. Uh, he was doing what? Pleading in front of a skull. It shows how his pride, how his carelessness, and how his worthless talking has caused such a great hunter to uh, big lead in front of a skull. And someone who is actually that skilled had to pay with his life because of his unnecessary talking. Then you can link it to the main argument by saying this humorous fall from bravery to pleading. It shows how worthless talking can ruin people. So that's the third point that you can write. Thereafter, you can simply add the conclusion. Nothing serious. The template is there here. This one. In conclusion, the poem Huntsman clearly portrays how excessive and worthless talking may ruin people. The above examples prove how Edward Lowbury displays this theme in the poem Huntsman. You can simply write something like that and complete the question. So I could simply type it here, but I expect you to write the third point. So you don't have to send the whole essay. Simply send me the third point. Okay, so now we have what? Three homeworks. One is summary. Of course, every single time you have to write a summary. It should have about the author. Then a summary, a short summary or story in brief. What's happening in the story. Thereafter, you should add literary devices, literary techniques. Techniques you write this, okay? Literary techniques, oh, another H. Techniques. Okay. What is author story? The themes and more. So you have to write these things in your own words and send. I will send last week's poem, the Eagle one's note after this lecture. So when you send the summary, I will send you the this PDF. Therefore, you can compare it and complete your summary if you are missing anything. That's the first one, the first homework. And thereafter, I gave you what? Write an essay about, you can recall the topic here. Environmental pollution, something like is harmful to human and nature. This you have to write by your own. Don't use AI. Write by your own and say it is not something serious. I have explained the points even. You can write by your nothing serious. Thereafter, complete this essay question. You have to at the third point, same thing like PBJ and T, nothing else. Okay, PBJ and T, it should be there clear. Better if you could simply break it down like I wrote PBJ and T and write it. That's better. And you have to write the conclusion. I did the hard part. You just have to write another point and write the conclusion. That's all you have to do. So next week, next session will be on next Tuesday, most probably Tuesday or Monday. Monday, I think I won't be able to conduct a class. So yeah, next Tuesday, 4:30. Okay. So you have like what, 1, 2, 3, 4 days. This is not something huge, right? You don't have to answer a full essay question. This is a small essay. You have tried the third point. The summary is the only big thing that you have to worry. So uh, actually, it's better if you could write the summary right after this session. So because you have all this whole concept, this whole idea about this poem. So while you have that knowledge, better to write it. Otherwise, when you get up next morning, you will forget the whole thing. That's another thing. Yeah. That's completely human. That's how our brains work. But yeah, it's up to you. So that's about it for today. Anything that you cannot understand that I need to explain once again? Any doubts? Anything that I need to go through once again? Any questions?
No question.
Okay. So what do you think about today's lesson? Any opinion or anything that you need to add? Any anyhow you want to contribute to the lesson or whatever? Nothing?
Nothing, sir.
Okay. That's fine. As I said, see, I could have just explained this poem within 50 minutes by saying the simple surface meaning. But as you have seen, the small things, the terms, the term himself and the term kagwa and the concept the law is blind and all, those things are hidden. These things were hidden inside the poem. And what literature means actually to understand those things. So I hope in future uh, you will start thinking critically and analyze poems and short stories and all by yourself. That is what actually intended from learning literature. So that's about it. And I hope you will do these things by your own without using any other tool. And that's it. So I wish you all the best and a good night. I will conclude the lesson from here. And for the courtesy, I'll be staying until you leave. Have a good day.
Thank you, sir.